Ever wanted to teach someone a lesson without them ever knowing it was you? Well, when my friend's boyfriend crossed the line, accusing her, hurting her, and leaving her bruised, I found the perfect way to ruin his life quietly, secretly, and completely legally. You won't believe how satisfying revenge can be. It all started with a simple invitation, just another ordinary game night. My girlfriend Lucy had casually mentioned she'd invited a classmate from her junior college named Sarah to come hang out, play some board games, and just chill. Honestly, I didn't think much of it at first. Just another friendly face around the apartment, right? Little did I know, this innocent game night would lead to a dramatic showdown that changed all our lives. When Sarah arrived, I had that weird feeling of déjà vu. She looked so familiar. Turns out, she was someone I had vaguely known back in high school. We hadn't been close friends, but we'd interacted enough to recognize each other, and that little bit of familiarity instantly broke the ice. Sarah was outgoing, easy to get along with, and quickly fit right into our circle of friends. We laughed, joked, and had the kind of evening you never want to end. From then on, Sarah became a regular part of our lives. She'd frequently join Lucy and me for dinners, movies, and more game nights, each one as fun as the Sarah had this infectious energy. Everyone liked her instantly. But there was one small, dark cloud hovering around this new friendship. Her boyfriend, JG, came over only a few times, and it was clear from the beginning he didn't really want to be there. Each time, he was moody, quiet, or outright rude, barely engaging with anyone. You know that awkward feeling when someone obviously doesn't want to hang out, but they're still lingering, bringing down everyone's mood. Yeah, that was Jay to a T. Everyone felt it. Even Sarah, though she always made excuses for him, claiming he was just shy or had a long day. As weeks passed, Jay became increasingly scarce, which, honestly, was a relief. Without his uncomfortable presence, our group could relax and enjoy the moments even more fully. We still invited him out of politeness, but thankfully, he consistently found excuses not to come. Just when we thought things had settled into a nice routine, everything flipped upside down. One night, Sarah called Lucy hysterically crying. Something serious had happened, and she needed a safe place immediately. Of course, Lucy and I instantly told her to come over, worried sick about what we might hear. When Sarah finally arrived, she was visibly shaken, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. Lucy comforted her while I made some tea, trying to provide some sense of normalcy. It took some time, but eventually, Sarah opened up. Jay had exploded, accusing her of cheating on him simply because she'd been spending so much time at our place. The accusations were wild. Was she cheating with me? Lucy? Both of us. It was all nonsense, but Jay had convinced himself otherwise. During their argument, Jay lost control, screaming in her face, calling her awful, degrading names. Sarah tried to escape the argument by leaving the apartment, but as she moved past him, he shoved her violently. She stumbled backward, crashing into the coffee table and bruising herself badly. Lucy gently explained the severity of Sarah's injury later, as she had seen the painful bruise firsthand. I didn't witness it myself, but just hearing about the violence sent a rush of anger through my veins. I've never been a violent person, but at that moment, something inside me snapped. Hurting a friend was unforgivable, and Jay needed to pay. But I knew confronting him directly wasn't my style. No, I wanted revenge. Silent and devastating revenge. But how exactly was I going to pull that off? Well, I had a unique advantage. At the time, I was working part-time in the administration office of our college. My job gave me direct access to every student's records, their class schedules, debts, and enrollment details. And as luck or maybe fate would have it, the final day to add or drop classes without repercussions was fast approaching. An idea began to take shape: quiet, methodical, and undeniably ruthless. Jay was a foreign student, which meant maintaining his enrollment was crucial to staying in the country. One slip-up in his schedule, and his entire life could come crashing down. Little did Jay know, his reckless violence against Sarah was about to trigger an invisible domino effect, quietly orchestrated from behind a desk. My heart raced with adrenaline as I sat down to put my plan into action, ready to give Jay the unforgettable lesson he deserved. And honestly, part of me wondered, was I going too far? But then, I remembered the fear in Sarah's eyes, and any hesitation melted away. Jay had crossed the line, and now it was time for consequences. The night Sarah showed up at our door in tears, I knew immediately something had gone horribly wrong. She stood trembling, her eyes red and swollen, barely able to speak through sobs. Lucy hugged her tightly, guiding her gently into our apartment. I felt a surge of dread. This wasn't typical drama. This felt genuinely serious. Sarah collapsed onto our sofa, visibly shaken. Lucy sat beside her, offering tissues and comforting words, while I tried to bring some warmth back into the room with hot tea. When Sarah finally started speaking, her voice was shaky, filled with raw emotion and disbelief. She described the nightmare scenario that had unfolded earlier. Jay had become increasingly possessive over the weeks, upset by how often Sarah was spending time with us. His jealousy boiled over into paranoia, convincing himself that Sarah must be cheating. The accusations he hurled at her were absurd, accusing her of betraying him with Lucy, me, or even both of us. His rage blinded him to reason, turning their home into a battleground of irrational arguments. That night, things took an alarming turn. The argument escalated into a full-blown confrontation. Jay screamed vicious insults, calling Sarah every degrading name imaginable. Sarah described the fear she felt, trapped in the apartment, unsure how to calm him down or escape safely. When she finally tried to leave, hoping to avoid further escalation, Jay's anger exploded. As she moved past him, he violently pushed her away. Sarah stumbled backward, completely losing her balance, crashing painfully onto their coffee table. The impact was harsh, leaving her with a deep, painful bruise on her lower back. Lucy later privately described the injury to me after seeing it firsthand, confirming it was as bad as Sarah had said. Though I never personally saw the bruise, hearing about it filled me with fury and disgust. Sarah desperately tried to downplay the assault as an accident, saying Jay had never been physically aggressive before. But Lucy and I both sensed Sarah's hesitation, her confusion clouded by fear and misplaced loyalty. My gut instinct screamed that Jay had crossed a terrifying line. He'd hurt someone close to us, someone who trusted him, and I refused to let him get away with it. I wasn't a violent person. I've never thrown a punch in my life. But that night, my mind raced, thoughts consumed by the burning need for justice. Sarah didn't deserve this pain and betrayal. My protective instincts kicked in hard, driven by anger and a strong sense of loyalty. I knew immediately that confronting Jay directly wouldn't resolve anything. He was volatile and unpredictable. No, I had to think smarter, and that's when my mind latched onto something. At the time, I worked in the college administration building. My job gave me unprecedented access to the records of every fees, personal details. Everything was at my fingertips. With the deadline to adjust or drop classes rapidly approaching, I realized I could hit Jay exactly where it hurt the most. As an international student, Jay's legal status depended entirely on his college enrollment. One mistake, one alteration to his schedule, could flip his entire world upside down. A calculated, hidden revenge plan began to form, fueled by a mix of anger and adrenaline. Jay thought he could abuse and manipulate without consequence, but he was about to learn just how mistaken he was. Quietly sitting behind my desk, feeling empowered by the possibility of anonymous justice, I plotted my next move carefully. In those moments, part of me questioned if this revenge was justified. Was I crossing a line myself? But whenever doubt crept in, I pictured Sarah, terrified and vulnerable, and my resolve hardened. Jay had unleashed chaos, pain, and humiliation upon someone I cared about deeply. Now, it was time for him to face his own brand of chaos, quiet, anonymous, and far more damaging than he ever imagined. He had chosen to escalate things to violence, but I would ensure that the repercussions for him would be even greater. The shocking confrontation with Sarah wasn't the end. It was only the spark that ignited something far bigger, something Jay would never see coming. The next morning, after the shocking confrontation, my mind felt electric, buzzing with both anger and anticipation. As I walked into work at the college's administration office, every step felt like I was moving closer to justice. Behind my calm exterior, a plan was taking shape, a plan that would quietly devastate Jay's life without a single punch thrown. Working at the college admin had its perks, the biggest of which was unlimited access to every student's files, schedules, and records. If I wanted, I could know everything about anyone enrolled. Usually it felt mundane, routine paperwork and checking minor details. But today, this access felt powerful. It gave me leverage, a chance to exact revenge without ever being detected. Jay, as an international student, had strict visa conditions that hinged entirely on his active enrollment in classes. If his academic status changed suddenly or dramatically, it could mean serious trouble, potentially ending his stay entirely. The pieces were falling into place, perfectly aligning for the kind of poetic justice Jay never saw coming. I logged into the system casually, feeling a spike of adrenaline. Typing Jay's name into the student database felt almost surreal, like stepping into forbidden territory. His profile flashed up quickly, everything laid bare in front of me: his schedule, course history, outstanding fees, his entire academic existence at my fingertips. The key to my revenge lay in timing. It was nearly the deadline to add or drop classes without penalties. One little adjustment, dropping all of his classes, and Jay would lose the crucial enrollment he needed. But I knew that wasn't quite enough. To ensure maximum disruption, I'd go even further, enrolling him in random classes with costly course fees he couldn't easily clear, creating a tangled mess he'd spend months trying to fix. As I hovered over the keyboard, my heart beat faster. A tiny voice inside me hesitated, whispering about morality and consequence. Was I really ready to become this calculating? But the image of Sarah, hurt and betrayed, swiftly silenced any second thoughts. Jay had crossed a dangerous line first, hurting someone innocent, someone who trusted him. This was no petty revenge. It was justice. With a firm decision, I methodically began canceling Jay's classes, one by one, watching his entire schedule vanish before my eyes. Each click felt powerful, as if I was taking back control for Sarah, giving her a victory she couldn't claim herself. After erasing his schedule, I meticulously replaced his original classes with random selections, each carrying expensive course fees. Within minutes, Jay's academic status went from perfectly normal to chaotic, a devastating shift he wouldn't realize until it was too late. I double-checked my work, making sure the alterations were thorough but subtle enough not to raise suspicion. My heart was racing, yet my hands remained steady. Clicking the final confirmation, I leaned back, feeling an intense, dark satisfaction. My revenge was perfectly executed, anonymous, invisible, yet devastatingly effective. Jay had chosen to abuse trust and wield violence. Now, he'd face consequences, harshly and undeniably, and yet never know who orchestrated his downfall. It felt right, it felt fair, and most importantly, it felt just. On the day I decided to execute my plan, my nerves buzzed like electricity. It felt surreal, like stepping out of my usual self and into someone far more daring and ruthless. Every minute that ticked by heightened the tension. Each breath felt heavier, every keystroke more powerful. Walking into the administration office that morning, I greeted my colleagues casually, forcing myself to maintain a calm demeanor. Inside, my mind was anything but calm. I knew exactly what I was about to do, and the weight of it both excited and unnerved me. This wasn't just a petty prank, this was life-altering revenge. Settling at my desk, I glanced around casually, ensuring no one was paying attention. My co-workers were buried in their usual tasks, completely unaware of what was about to happen. It was just another ordinary day for them. Perfect cover for the extraordinary act I was about to commit. Logging onto the system, my heart hammered in my chest. The student database appeared instantly, offering complete control. Typing Jay's name felt oddly satisfying, each letter bringing me closer to the justice Sarah deserved. His profile flashed on screen, laying bare his entire academic existence. First, I methodically began canceling Jay's carefully chosen courses, each click bringing a deeper sense of satisfaction. His schedule vanished line by line, each deletion a small piece of retribution. I imagined his confusion when he'd inevitably discover this sudden academic disaster, completely unaware that it was carefully orchestrated from behind this anonymous desk. But simply canceling his classes wasn't enough. I had to ensure Jay faced real, lasting consequences. So, I quickly searched through the course catalog, selecting random classes with steep fees. Each one was deliberately irrelevant, costly, and absurdly inconvenient. One by one, I enrolled Jay, each action adding a layer of complexity he'd spend weeks or even months trying to resolve. With every course added, a sense of justice washed over me. He'd brought pain and chaos into Sarah's life. Now it was his turn to experience chaos firsthand. But I was careful. I double-checked each move, ensuring everything appeared accidental enough not to raise immediate suspicion. Jay's schedule transformed from carefully structured to utterly disastrous, filled with expensive and irrelevant obligations. Finally, I sat back, breathless, staring at the screen. It was done. The carefully executed revenge plan was complete. Jay's academic life was now in turmoil, his visa potentially at risk, and he had no idea who was responsible. My revenge was quiet, ruthless, and completely invisible, exactly as intended. As the adrenaline slowly faded, doubts momentarily surfaced. Had I gone too far? Could I justify such harsh actions? But recalling Sarah's terrified eyes and the bruises she'd hidden, my resolve hardened again. Jay had chosen his path of violence and betrayal. Now, he would walk it alone, facing consequences he never imagined. The silent revenge was complete. Now, all that remained was to wait and watch as Jay's life unraveled around him exactly as he deserved. When Tuesday arrived, the day Sarah shared an English class with Jay, my anticipation was almost unbearable. I couldn't be there personally, but Sarah promised she'd update me afterward. The suspense felt electrifying. Would my carefully executed revenge plan unfold perfectly, or would something unexpected throw it off course? Sarah walked into class anxiously, dreading the possibility of confrontation. She'd spent the past few days stressed, worried Jay might confront her again after their explosive fallout. As students trickled into the classroom, she spotted Jay, looking tense but unaware of the storm about to hit him. Then, something unexpected happened. A new student stood awkwardly by the door, looking uncertain and confused. There were no available seats. This immediately caught the teacher's attention, prompting him to recheck the attendance list. Sarah felt her heart leap in anticipation. This was the moment my revenge plan hinged upon. As the teacher read out names, students replied one by one, confirming their spots. The class was completely full, each name accounted for. Finally, the teacher reached the end of the roster. Jay's name was conspicuously absent. When the teacher looked up, clearly puzzled, Jay awkwardly raised his voice, insisting his name should be there. But the roster was final, official, and non-negotiable. The confusion in Jay's voice quickly escalated into panic and embarrassment as his classmates watched the scene unfold. Sarah later described the moment to me vividly: the growing frustration in Jay's face, the embarrassment turning his ears bright red, and his futile attempts to argue with the teacher. But rules were rules, and Jay wasn't on the official list. He was forced to leave, humiliated and baffled by the unexpected chaos in his life. When Sarah called me later, her voice carried relief and satisfaction. For her, this unexpected turn of events felt like karmic justice, a brief moment of triumph after the fear and humiliation Jay had caused her. Hearing Sarah's account gave me an intense sense of satisfaction, more powerful than I'd imagined. This was the moment I'd envisioned, the payoff for all the careful planning, the sweet, undeniable taste of revenge. 4 days afterward, Sarah kept an eye out for Jay around campus, wondering what other damage my plan had inflicted. But he seemed to vanish, presumably scrambling to fix the disastrous academic mess I had quietly created. Each day without seeing him was a quiet victory, proof that my revenge was working better than expected. Deep down, I knew my actions had significant consequences, possibly even affecting Jay's visa and future in the country. But whenever guilt crept in, I reminded myself of Sarah's bruised back, her terrified face, and Jay's cold-hearted cruelty. My revenge wasn't just about settling a score. It was about restoring balance, making sure Jay experienced the helplessness and chaos he had forced onto Sarah. As weeks passed, Jay remained absent from our lives, each day reinforcing the success of my revenge. I occasionally wondered how he was coping, if he'd pieced together what happened, but mostly, I felt a quiet, powerful satisfaction. Revenge had tasted sweet, far sweeter than I ever anticipated, perfectly balancing the scales of justice. After everything unfolded, life started to feel quieter. The tension that had loomed like a storm cloud lifted. Sarah seemed lighter, more at ease, and slowly began to rebuild her confidence. There were no more panicked phone calls, no more teary breakdowns, and most importantly, no more Jay. He vanished, just like that. Days passed, then weeks. No one saw him around campus. Sarah didn't run into him in the halls or in any of her other classes. It was like he disappeared into thin air. And maybe, in a way, he had eventually. I gave in to curiosity. Logging back into the student system, I searched for his records. His name came up barely. The expensive courses I'd enrolled him in had been dropped, but there were no new classes in their place. His schedule was empty. No enrollment, no fees, no activity. It wasn't definitive proof, but it strongly suggested he was out. Either he'd been expelled due to the dropped units, or he left voluntarily. Once he realized how deep in the mess he was, I'll never know for sure what exact straw broke him, but something did, and that was enough. Still, I often found myself wondering, did he ever suspect me? Did he even grasp what had happened? Or did he blame the school for a clerical error? Was he back in his home country, explaining to his family why he'd suddenly been booted from his studies? The beauty of the whole thing was in its anonymity. I didn't need credit, I didn't want it. My revenge was silent but effective, surgical, not explosive. There was no dramatic confrontation, no confessions, just a cold unraveling of his academic world while he scrambled to figure out what had gone wrong. And yet, I did feel something else along with satisfaction, a quiet sense of caution. I've tapped into something powerful, something dark. I'd done what I felt was right, but I couldn't deny how easy it had been to do it. That access, that control. It had a weight I hadn't fully grasped until I used it. Still, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because the truth is, this wasn't about petty revenge. This was about protecting someone who didn't have the power to protect herself in that moment. Sarah was vulnerable, she was scared, and someone needed to send a message not just to Jay, but to anyone like him. Hurt someone, and it won't go unanswered. That experience changed me. It didn't turn me into a villain or a vigilante, but it opened my eyes. Sometimes justice doesn't come through official channels. Sometimes it needs a little nudge, or a full-on shove. And even now, when I think back on those days, I don't feel guilt. I feel resolve, because I made sure Sarah never had to sit in a classroom and feel unsafe again. And in the end, that's all that mattered. Revenge doesn't always need to be loud, it just needs to be smart. If you've ever wanted to take justice into your own hands, you're not alone. Hit that like button, subscribe for more true revenge tales, and drop your most savage story in the comments. Let's hear your karma classics.